another thing I did was I studied centered riding. And centered riding also had divided the rider's body. So this is the first sketch I'm going to show you. And here we define body parts. Now, part of this was centered riding and part of it was George Morrison. I just combined the ideas. So the head, obviously, is above the upper body. And remember that we have the neck, which allows us to turn, and our upper body, which is everything above where you're sitting, which is now identified as your base of support. So the weight carrying part of your seat, and that goes down to your knee. And then everything from the knee down is called the leg. So there are the body segments of the rider. So that's important. Next, I'm going to just skip over that second one, is dividing the horse's body into lines and boxes. So you can see the first line, the second line, the third line, the fourth line. Now those are all flexion points in the horse's body. And then the boxes, the first box being the head, the second box from the back of the skull to the front of the shoulders, that's the second box. The third box is shoulder blades and front legs, which include the elbows, important. I'll discuss that later on. And then from the elbow to the stifle, from just behind the elbow to just in front of the stifle is the fourth box. And the fifth box is from the stifle to the end of the horse. So now you have lines and boxes to identify the various parts of the body. And I identify these to my students, both the body parts of the rider and the body parts and lines of the horse. Now, we have this other thing, which most people are completely unaware of, and it's the asymmetrical shape of the horse when seen from above. Now, this is different. I came up with this because of riding all those green horses that had, many of them had never really been handled or even halter broke. They weren't wild, they were domestic horses that just hadn't been handled, or some of them had. I noticed this whole situation of asymmetrical posture. And I actually discussed this with Tony Gonzalez because I also studied with Tony Gonzalez, Hawaiian-born native Hawaiian farrier that moved to California. He came up with a lot of really important stuff on hoof balancing. It was all Tony Gonzalez that started that, despite what anybody else has to say. Okay, so now you see the lines and boxes, and you see the asymmetrical shape that's going on there. Now I'm going to move to my last and final drawing. I'm sorry, it's got a wrinkle in it. They've all got wrinkles. These are old sketches. So what it means, because of the shape of the horse's neck, the left side is usually from the wither forward is usually much more willing to bend to the left. On the right side of the horse's neck, they are not so willing to bend to the right because their natural anatomical muscular shape has them bent to the left. And then the shoulders are the opposite. And of course, so too is the rib cage. And then finally the hips. So you can see that. So basically what happens is this means the shoulders tend to move to the left, the hip tends to move to the right, and very often the horse will lower that right shoulder and make a hole for the rider to fall in. I see that so often. So these are very important diagrams, and I will post them on my Facebook page as individual photographs, and I'm encouraging you to save those individual photographs and become familiar with this, because I don't think you're going to see this anyplace else unless somebody's copying me. And it's okay if people copy me, because this stuff needs to be shared. And also, let me say, this is horses north of the equator. Not having been south of the equator, I can't say, but I have a suspicion that it's probably the opposite way, and the further south of the equator you go, probably the more likely you are to find it. Again, if you haven't shared, please share, and press the like button. And if you feel obliged to make a comment, I'd love to hear it or read it. Thank you. Love you all.